晚上好，晚上好。我的声音会太小声或太大声吗？晚上好，可以 ，OK。那我们今天呢是要朗读纯英文的小说。36.8度是什么意思？今天是我特别去书店买的福尔摩斯原文书。我自己呢是只有看过中文译本，但是我真的很喜欢福尔摩斯，然后好像蛮多伴星喜欢我念英文的，所以就买了原文书来，想要念给大家听，想分享一下福尔摩斯这个作品。那翻译的部分呢，我不会翻译，但是我可以大概说一下我讲到哪里了，这样手边有译文或是有原文书的伴星们就可以对照一下我念到哪里。希望你们会喜欢，因为我蛮喜欢看实体书的，而且我的眼睛也比较不会视觉暂留。其实我朗读念网络文章的时候，我都有一点视觉暂留的感觉，所以我很期待今天可以念这一本给大家听。好，我当然不会今天念完整本，那可能 YouTube 都撑不了的耐久。它一本超级厚。OK， 前言讲完了，那希望大家今天不管你们的心情如何，不管你们过着怎么样的一天，不管最近发生了什么事，不管有什么大风大浪、小风小浪，希望你们都可以带着期待和开心愉悦的心情来到Nemo的房间。希望你们在这边都可以和我一起享受安安静静的夜晚。希望你们可以看到我只会开心。还有放松，对，今天也要放松。那今天我会认认真真的朗读，那聊天室我就不太会去回复。那等到我朗读到一个段落的时候，我会再看什么时候可以来跟你们聊天这样子。那希望想透过那么这边助眠的伴星们，可以放下手机，躺到你的被窝里。在这么冷的天，我相信你现在已经快要睡着了。Nemesisさん本日ももっといらっしゃい。OK， 那就我真的很希望大家都可以开开心心的，其余的小事情我们不要太去纠结 ，OK？ 我很好，只是我敲到桌子了，好痛。我很好，不用太担心我。 那接下来呢，就要到我们朗读的环节了。来，开始。福尔摩斯的第一个故事叫做《A Study in Scarlet》，写字的研究。Chapter 1 Mr. Sherlock Holmes. In the year 1878, I took my degree of Doctor of Medicine of the University of London, and proceeded till neatly to go through the course prescribed for surgeons in the army. 一开始呢，他会先从华生医生的角度来带入这个福尔摩斯的故事。Having completed my studies there, I was duly attached to the 5th Northumberland Fusiliers as assistant surgeon. The regiment was stationed in India at the time, and before I could join it, the Second Afghan War had broken out. On landing at Bombay, I learned that my corps had advanced through the passes, and was already deep in the enemy's country. I followed, however, with many other officers who were in the same situation as myself, and succeeded in reaching Kandahar in safety, where I found my regiment and at once entered upon my new duties. The campaign brought honors and promotion to many, but for me it had nothing but misfortune and disaster. I was removed from my brigade and attached to the Bushers, with whom I served at the fatal battle of my wound. There I was struck on the shoulder by a Giselle bullet, which shattered the bone and grazed the subclavian artery. I should have fallen into the hands of the murderers, justice, had it not been for the devotion and courage shown by Murray, my orderly, who threw me across a pack horse and succeeded in bringing me safely to the British lines. Born with pain and weak from the prolonged hardships which I had undergone, I was removed, with a great train of wounded sufferers, to the base hospital at Peshawar. Here I rallied, and had already improved so far as to be able to walk about the wards, and even to bask a little upon the veranda. When I was struck down by enteric fever, that cause of our Indian possessions, for months my life was despaired of, and when at last I came to myself and became convalescent, I was so weak and emaciated that a medical board determined that not a day should be lost in sending me back to England. I was dispatched, accordingly, in the troopship Orton's, and landed a month later on Portsmouth jetty, with my health irretrievably ruined, but with permission from a paternal government to spend the next 9 months in attempting to approve it. I had neither kith nor kin in England, and was therefore as free as air, or as free as an income of 11 shillings and 6 pence a day will permit a man to be. Under such circumstances, I naturally gravitated to London, that great cesspool into which all the loungers and idlers of the empire are irresistibly drained. There I stayed for some time at a private hotel in the Strand, leading a comfortless, meaningless existence, and spending such money as I had considerably more freely than I ought. So alarming did the state of my finances become that I soon realized that I must either leave the metropolis and rusticate somewhere in the country, or that I must make a complete alteration in my style of living. Choosing the latter alternative, I began by making up my mind to leave the hotel and take up my quarters in some less pretentious and less expensive domicile. On the very day that I had come to this conclusion, I was standing at the Criterion bar, when someone tapped me on the shoulder, and turning round I recognized young Stamford, who had been a dresser under me at Bott's. The sight of a friendly face in the great wilderness of London is a pleasant thing indeed to a lonely man. In old days, Stamford had never been a particular crony of mine, but now I hailed him with enthusiasm, and he, in his turn, appeared to be delighted to see me. In the exuberance of my joy, I asked him to lunch with me at the Holborn, and we started off together in a hansom. "Whatever have you been doing with yourself, Watson?" he asked in undisguised wonder, as we rattled through the crowded London streets. "You are as thin as a lath and as brown as a knot." I gave him a short sketch of my adventures, and had hardly concluded it by the time that we reached our destination. "Poor devil," he said, commiseratingly, after he had listened to my misfortunes. "What are you up to now?" "Looking for lodgings," I answered, trying to solve the problem as to whether it is possible to get comfortable rooms at a reasonable price. "That's a strange thing," remarked my companion. "You are the second man today that has used that expression to me." "And who was the first?" I asked. "A fellow who is working at the chemical laboratory at the hospital. He was bemoaning himself this morning because he could not get someone to go halves with him in some nice rooms which he had found, and which were too much for his purse." "By Jove," I cried, "if he really wants someone to share the rooms and the expense, I'm the very man for him. I should prefer having a partner to being alone." Young Stamford looked rather strangely at me over his wine-glass. "You don't know Sherlock Holmes yet," he said. "Perhaps you would not care for him as a constant companion." "Why? What is there against him?" "Oh, I didn't say there was anything against him. He is a little queer in his ideas, an enthusiast in some branches of science. As far as I know, he is a decent fellow enough. A medical student, I suppose, said I. No, I have no idea what he intends to go in for. I believe he is well up in anatomy, and he is a first-class chemist, but as far as I know, he has never taken out any systematic medical classes. His studies are very desultory and eccentric, but he has amassed a lot of out-of-the-way knowledge, which would astonish his professors. Did you never ask him what he was going in for? I asked. No, he is not a man that it is easy to draw out, though he can be communicative enough when the fancy seizes him. I should like to meet him, I said. If I am to lodge with anyone, I should prefer a man of studious and quiet habits. I am not strong enough yet to stand much noise or excitement. I heard enough of both in Afghanistan to last me for the remainder of my natural existence. How could I meet this friend of yours? He is sure to be at the laboratory, returned my companion. He either avoids the place for weeks, or else he works there from morning till night. If you like, we will drive round together after luncheon. Certainly, I answered, and the conversation drifted away into other channels. As we made our way to the hospital after leaving the Holborn, Sanford gave me a few more particulars about the gentleman whom I proposed to take as a fellow lodger. You mustn't blame me if you don't get on with him, he said. I know nothing more of him than I have learned from meeting him occasionally in the laboratory. You proposed this arrangement, so you must not hold me responsible. If we don't get on it will be easy to part company, I answered. It seems to me, Sanford, I added, looking hard at my companion, that you have some reason for washing your hands of the matter. Is this fellow's temper so formidable, or what is it? Don't be mealy-mouthed about it. It is not easy to express the inexpressible, he answered with a laugh. Holmes is a little too scientific for my tastes. It approaches to cold-bloodedness. I could imagine his giving a friend a little pinch of the latest vegetable occult, not out of malevolence, you understand, but simply out of a spirit of inquiry in order to have an accurate idea of the effects. To do him justice, I think that he would take it himself with the same readiness. He appears to have a passion for definite and exact knowledge. Very right too. Yes, but it may be pushed to excess. When it comes to beating the subjects in the dissecting rooms with a stick, it is certainly taking rather a bizarre shape. Beating the subjects? Yes, to verify how far bruises may be produced after death. I saw him at it with my own eyes. And yet, you say he is not a medical student? No, heaven knows what the objects of his studies are. But here we are, and you must form your own impressions about him. As he spoke, we turned down a narrow lane and passed through a small side door, which opened into a wing of the great hospital. It was familiar ground to me, and I needed no guiding as we ascended the bleak stone staircase and made our way down the long corridor with its vista of whitewashed wall and dawn-colored doors. Near the further end, a low arched passage branched away from it and led to the chemical laboratory. This was a lovely chamber, light and littered with countless bottles. Broad, low tables were scattered about, which bristled with retorts, test tubes, and little Bunsen lamps, with their blue flickering flames. There was only one student in the room, who was bending over a distant table, absorbed in his work. At the sound of our steps, he glanced round and sprang to his feet with a cry of pleasure. "I found it! I found it!" he shouted to my companion, running towards us with a test tube in his hand. "I have found a reagent which is precipitated by hemoglobin and by nothing else." Had he discovered a gold mine, greater delight could not have shone upon his features. "Dr. Watson, Mr. Sherlock Holmes," said Stanford, introducing us. "How are you?" he said cordially, gripping my hand with a strength for which I should hardly have given him credit. "You have been in Afghanistan, I perceive." "How on earth did you know that?" I asked in astonishment. "Never mind," said he, chuckling to himself. "The question now is about hobgoblin. No doubt you see the significance of this discovery of mine." "It is interesting, chemically, no doubt," I answered. "But practically, why, man, it is the most practical medical legal discovery for years. Don't you see that it gives us an infallible test for blood stains? Come over here now." He seized me by the coat sleeve in his eagerness and drew me over to the table at which he had been working. "Let us have some fresh blood," he said, digging a long bodkin into his finger and drawing off the resulting drop of blood in a chemical pipette. Now I add this small quantity of blood to a liter of water. You perceive that the resulting mixture has the appearance of pure water. The proportion of blood cannot be more than 1 in a million. I have no doubt, however, that we should be able to obtain the characteristic reaction. As he spoke, he threw into the vessel a few white crystals. White crystals, and then added some drops of a transparent fluid. In an instant, the contents assumed a dull mahogany color, and a brownish dust was precipitated to the bottom of the glass jar. "Ha ha!" he cried, clapping his hands and looking as delighted as a child with a new toy. "What do you think of that?" "It seems to be a very delicate test," I remarked. "Beautiful, beautiful." The old Guaiscom test was very clumsy and uncertain. So is the microscopic examination for blood corpuscles. The latter is valueless if the stains are a few hours old. Now, this appears to act as well whether the blood is old or new. Had this test been invented, there are hundreds of men now walking the earth who will long ago have paid the penalty of their crimes. "Indeed," I murmured. "Criminal cases are continually hanging upon that one point. A man is suspected of a crime months perhaps after it has been committed. His linen or clothes are examined and brownish stains discovered upon them. Are they blood stains, or mud stains, or rust stains, or fruit stains, or what are they? That is the question which has puzzled many an expert. And why? Because there was no reliable test. Now we have the Sherlock Holmes test, and there will no longer be any difficulty." His eyes fairly glittered as he spoke, and he put his hand over his heart and bowed as if to some applauding crowd conjured up by his imagination. "You are to be congratulated," I remarked, considerably surprised at his enthusiasm. "There was a case of von Bischoff at Frankfurt last year. He would certainly have been hung had his test been in existence. Then there was Mason of Radford, and the notorious Muller, and Leffer of Montpellier, and Simpson of New Orleans." I could name a score of cases in which it would have been decisive. "You seem to be a walking calendar of crime," said Stanford with a laugh. "You might start a paper on those lines. Call it the police news of the past." "Very interesting reading it might be made, too," remarked Sherlock Holmes, sticking a small piece of plaster over the prick on his finger. "I have to be careful," he continued, turning to me with a smile, "for I dabble with poisons a good deal." He held out his hand as he spoke, and I noticed that it was all mortar over his familiar pieces of plaster, and discolored with strong acid. "We came here on business," said Stanford, sitting down on a high three-legged stool and pushing another one in my direction with his foot. My friend here wants to take digits, and as you were complaining that you could get no one to go halves with you, I thought that I had better bring you together. Sherlock Holmes seems delighted at the idea of sharing his rooms with me. I have my eye on a suite in Baker Street, he said, which would suit us down to the ground. You don't mind the smell of strong tobacco, I hope? I always smoke chips myself, I answered. That's good enough. I generally have chemicals about, and occasionally do experiments. Will that annoy you? By no means. Let me see. What are my other shortcomings? I get in the dumps at times and don't open my mouth for days on end. You must not think I'm sulky when I do that. Just let me alone and I'll soon be right. What have you to confess now? It's just as well for two fellows to know the worth of one another before they begin to live together. I laughed at this cross-examination. I keep a bullpup, I said, and I object to roast because my nerves are shaken. And I get up at all sorts of ungodly hours, and I'm extremely lazy. I have another set of vices when I'm well, but those are the principal ones at present. Do you include violin playing in your category of roles? He asked anxiously. It depends on the player, I answered. A well-played violin is a treat for the gods, a badly played one. Oh, that's all right, he cried, with a merry laugh. I think we may consider the thing as settled, that is, if the rooms are agreeable to you. When shall we see them? Call for me here at noon tomorrow, and we'll go together and settle everything, he answered. All right, noon exactly, said I, shaking his hand. We left him working among his chemicals, and we walked together towards my hotel. By the way, I asked suddenly, stopping and turning upon Stanford. How the deuce did he know that I had come from Afghanistan? My companion smiled an enigmatical smile. That's just his little peculiarity, he said. A good many people have wanted to know how he finds things out. Oh, a mystery is it? I cried, rubbing my hands. This is very piquant. I am much obliged to you for bringing us together. The proper study of mankind is man, you know. You must study him, then, Stanford said, as he bade me goodbye. You'll find him a naughty problem, though. Oh, like he learns more about you than you about him. Goodbye. Goodbye, I answered, and strolled on to my hotel, considerably interested in my new acquaintance. Chapter 2: Science of Deduction. We met next day as he had arranged, and expected the rooms are numbered 221B, Baker Street, of which he had spoken at our meeting. They consisted of a couple of comfortable bedrooms and a single large airy sitting room, cheerfully furnished and illuminated by 2 broad windows, so desirable in every way were the apartments, and so moderate did the time seem when divided between us, that the bargain was concluded upon the spot, and we at once entered into possession. That very evening I moved my things round from the hotel, and on the following morning Sherlock Holmes followed me with several boxes and portmanteaus. For a day or 2 we were busily employed in unpacking and laying out our property to the best advantage. That done, we gradually began to settle down and to accommodate ourselves to our new surroundings. Holmes was certainly not a difficult man to live with. He was quiet in his ways, and his habits were regular. It was rare for him to be up after 10 at night, and he had invariably breakfasted and gone out before I rose in the morning. Sometimes he spent his day at a chemical laboratory, sometimes in the dissecting rooms, and occasionally in long walks, which appeared to take him into the lowest portions of the city. Nothing could exceed his energy when the walking fit was upon him. But now and again a reaction would seize him, and for days on end he would lie upon the sofa in the sitting room, hardly uttering a word or moving a muscle from morning to night. On these occasions I have noticed such a dreamy, vacant expression in his eyes, that I might have suspected him of being addicted to the use of some narcotic, had not the temperance and cleanliness of his whole life forbidden such a notion. As the weeks went by, my interest in him and my curiosity as to his aims in life gradually deepened and increased. His very person and appearance were such as to strike the attention of the most casual observer. In height, he was rather over 6 feet, and so excessively lean that he seemed to be considerably taller. His eyes were sharp and piercing, save during those intervals of torpor to which I have alluded, and his thin, hawk-like nose gave his whole expression an air of alertness and decision. His chin, too, had the prominence and squareness which marked the man of determination. His hands were invariably blotted with ink and stained with chemicals, yet he was possessed of extraordinary delicacy of touch. as I frequently had occasion to observe when I watched him manipulating his fragile philosophical instruments. The reader may set me down as a hopeless busybody when I confess how much this man stimulated my curiosity, and how often I endeavored to break through the reticence which he showed on all that concerned himself. Before pronouncing judgment, however, be it remembered how objectless was my life, and how little there was to engage my attention. My health forbade me from venturing out unless the weather was exceptionally genial, and I had no friends who would call upon me and break the monotony of my daily existence. Under these circumstances, I eagerly held the little mystery which hung around my companion, and spent much of the time in endeavoring to unravel it. He was not studying medicine, he had himself, in reply to a question, conferred Stanford's opinion upon that point. Neither did he appear to have pursued any course of reading which might fit him for a degree in science or any other recognized portal which would give him an entrance into the learned world. Yet his zeal for certain studies was remarkable, and within eccentric limits his knowledge was so extraordinarily ample and minute that his observations have fairly astounded me. Surely no man would work so hard or attain such precise information unless he had some definite end in view. Desultory readers are seldom remarkable for the exactness of their learning. No man burdens his mind with small matters unless he has some very good reason for doing so. His ignorance was as remarkable as his knowledge. Of contemporary literature, philosophy, and politics he appeared to know next to nothing. Upon my quoting Thomas Carlyle, he inquired in the naivest way who he might be and what he had done. My surprise reached a climax, however, when I found incidentally that he was ignorant of the Copernican theory and of the composition of the solar system. That any civilized human being in this 19th century should not be aware that the earth traveled round the sun appeared to me to be such an extraordinary fact that I could hardly realize it. You appear to be astonished, he said, smiling at my expression of surprise. Now that I do know, I shall do my best to forget it. To forget it, you see, he explained. I considered that a man's brain originally is like a little empty attic, and you have to stock it with such furniture as you choose. A fool takes in all the lumber of every sort that he comes across, so that knowledge which might be useful to him gets crowded out, or at best jumbled up with a lot of other things, so that he has a difficulty in laying his hands upon it. Now the skillful workman is very careful indeed as to what he takes into his brain attic. He will have nothing but the tools which may help him in doing his work. But of these he has a large assortment, and all in the most perfect order. It is a mistake to think that that little room has elastic walls and can distend to any extent. Depend upon it, there comes a time when for every addition of knowledge you forget something that you knew before. It is of the highest importance, therefore, not to have useless facts elbowing out the useful ones. But the solar system, I protested. What the deuce is it to me? He interrupted impatiently. You say that we go around the sun. If we went round the moon, it would not make a pennyworth of difference to me or to my work. I was on the point of asking him what that work might be, but something in his manner showed me that the question would be an unwelcome one. I pondered over our short conversation, however, and endeavored to draw my deductions from it. He said that he would acquire no knowledge which did not bear upon his object. Therefore, all the knowledge which he possessed was such as would be useful to him. I enumerated in my own mind all the various points upon which he had shown me that he was exceptionally well informed. I even took a pencil and jotted them down. I could not help smiling at the document when I had completed it. It ran in this way: Sherlock Holmes, his limits. First, knowledge of literature. Now. Second, philosophy. Now. Third, astronomy. Now. Well up and belladonna, opium, and poisons generally, knows nothing of practical gardening. When I had got so far in my list, I threw it into the fire in despair. If I can only find what the fellow is driving at my reconciling all these accomplishments and discovering a calling which needs them all, I said to myself, I may as well give up the attempt at once. I see that I have alluded above to his powers upon the violin. These were very remarkable, but as eccentric as all his other accomplishments, that he could play pieces, and difficult pieces, I knew well. Because at my request he has played me some of Mendelssohn's Lied and other favorites. When left to himself, however, he would seldom produce any music or attempt any recognized air. leaning back in his armchair of an evening, he would close his eyes and scrape carelessly at the fiddle, which was thrown across his knee. Sometimes the chords were sonorous and melancholy. Occasionally they were fantastic and cheerful. Clearly, they reflected the thoughts which possessed him, but whether the music aided those thoughts, or whether the playing was simply the result of a whim or fancy, was more than I could determine. I might have rebelled against these exasperating solos had it not been that he usually terminated them by playing in quick successions a whole series of my favorite airs as a slight compensation for the trial upon my patience. During the first week or so we had no callers, and I had begun to think that my companion was as friendless a man as I was myself. Presently, however, I found that he had many acquaintances, and those in the most different classes of society. There was one little sallow, red-faced, dark-eyed fellow who was introduced to me as Mr. Lestrade, and who came 3 or 4 times in a single week. One morning a young girl called, fashionably dressed, and stayed for half an hour or more. The same afternoon brought a gray-headed city visitor, looking like a Jew peddler, who appeared to me to be much excited, and who was closely followed by a slit-shirted elderly woman. On another occasion, an old white-haired gentleman had an interview with my companion, and on another, a railway porter in his velveteen uniform. When any of these nondescribed individuals put in an appearance, Sherlock Holmes used to beg for the use of the sitting room, and I would retire to my bedroom. He always apologized to me for putting me to this inconvenience. "I have to use this room as a place of business," he said. And these people are my clients. Again, I had an opportunity of asking him a point-blank question, and again, my delicacy prevented me from forcing another man to confide in me. I imagined at the time that he had some strong reason for not alluding to it, but he soon dispelled the idea by coming round to the subject of his own accord. It was upon the 4th of March, as I have good reason to remember, that I rose somewhat earlier than usual, and found that Sherlock Holmes had not yet finished his breakfast. The landlady had become so accustomed to my late habits that my place had not been laid nor my coffee prepared. With the unreasonable petulance of mankind, I rang the bell and gave a curt intimation that I was ready. Then I picked up a magazine from the table and attempted to while away the time with it, while my companion munched silently at his toast. One of the articles had a pencil mark at the heading, and I naturally began to run my eye through it. Its somewhat ambitious title was The Book of Life, and it attempted to show how much an observant man might learn by an accurate and systematic examination of all that came in his way. It struck me as being a remarkable mixture of strangeness and of absurdity. The reasoning was close and intense, but the deductions appeared to me to be far-fetched and exaggerated. The writer claimed by a momentary expression, a twitch of a muscle or a glance of an eye, to fathom a man's inmost thoughts. This sight, according to him, was an impossibility in the case of one trained to observation and analysis. His conclusions were as infallible as so many propositions of Euclid. So startling would his results appear to the uninitiated, that until they learned the processes by which he had arrived at them, they might well consider him as a necromancer. From a drop of water, said the writer, a logician could infer the possibility of an Atlantic or a Niagara without having seen or heard of one or the other. So all life is a great chain, the nature of which is known whenever we are shown a single link of it. Like all other arts, the science of deduction and analysis is one which can only be acquired by long and patient study. Nor is life long enough to allow any mortal to attain the highest possible perfection in it. Before turning to those moral and mental aspects of the matter which present the greatest difficulties, let the inquirer begin by mastering more elementary problems. Let him, on meeting a fellow portal, learn at a glance to distinguish the history of the man and the trade or profession to which he belongs. Puerile as such an exercise may seem, it sharpens the faculties of observation and teaches one where to look and what to look for. By a man's fingernails, by his coat sleeve, by his boots, by his trousers knees, by the callosities of his forefinger and thumb, by his expression, by his shirt cuffs. By each of these things a man's calling is plainly revealed. That all united should fail to enlighten a competent inquiry in any case is almost inconceivable. What ineffable twaddle, I cried, slapping the magazine down on the table. I never read such rubbish in my life. What is it? asked Sherlock Holmes. Why, this article, I said, pointing at it with my egg-spoon. As I sat down to my breakfast, I see that you have read it since you have marked it. I don't deny that it is smartly written. It irritates me, though. It is evidently the theory of some armchair longer who involves all these neat little paradoxes in the seclusion of his own study. It is not practical. I should like to see him clapped down in a third-class carriage on the underground and asked to give the trace of all his fellow travelers. I will lay 1,000 to 1 against him. You will lose your money, Holmes remarked it calmly. As for the article, I wrote it myself. You? Yes, I have a term both for observation and for deduction. The theories which I have expressed there, and which appear to you to be so chimerical, are really extremely practical, so practical that I depend upon them for my bread and cheese. And how? I asked involuntarily. Well, I have a trade of my own. I suppose I'm the only one in the world. I'm a consulting detective, if you can understand what that is. Here in London, we have lots of government detectives and lots of private ones. When these fellows are at fault, they come to me, and I manage to put them on the right scent. They lay all the evidence before me, and I am generally able, by the help of my knowledge of the history of crime, to set them straight. There is a strong family resemblance about misdeeds, and if you have all the details of 1,000 at your fingers' ends, it is odd if you can't unravel this 1,001st. Lestrade is a well-known detective. He got himself into a recently of a forgery case, and that was what brought him here. And these are the people? They are mostly sent on by private inquiry agencies. They are all people who are in trouble about something and want a little enlightening. I listen to their story, they listen to my comments, and then I pocket my fee. But do you mean to say, I said, that without leaving your room, you can unravel some knot which other men can make nothing of, although they have seen every detail for themselves? Quite so. I have a kind of intuition that way. Now and again, a case turns up which is a little more complex. Then I have to bustle about and see things with my own eyes. You see, I have a lot of special knowledge which I apply to the problem, and which facilitates matters wonderfully. Those rules of deduction laid down in that article, which arouse you scorn, are invaluable to me in practical work. Observation with me is second natural. You appeared to be surprised when I told you, on our first meeting, that you had come from Afghanistan. You were told, no doubt. Nothing of the sort. I knew you came from Afghanistan. From long habit, the train of thoughts ran so swiftly through my mind that I arrived at a conclusion without being conscious of intermediate steps. There were such steps, however. the train of reasoning ran. Here is a gentleman of a medical type, but with the air of a military man, clearly an army doctor, then. He has just come from the tropics, for his face is dark, and that is not the natural tint of his skin, for his wrists are fair. He has undergone hardship and sickness, as his haggard face says clearly. His left arm has been injured. He holds it in a stiff and unnatural manner. Where in the tropics could an English army doctor have been much hardship and got him his arm wounded? Clearly in Afghanistan. The whole train of thought did not occupy a second. I then remarked that you came from Afghanistan, and you were astonished. It is simple enough as to explain it, I said, smiling. You remind me of Edgar Allan Poe's Dopin. I had no idea that such individuals did exist outside of stories. Sherlock Holmes rose and lit his pipe. No doubt you think that you are complimenting me in comparing me to Dopin, he observed. Now, in my opinion, Dopin was a very inferior fellow. That trick of his of breaking in on his friends' thoughts with an apropos remark after a quarter of an hour's silence is really very surly and superficial. He has some analytical genius, no doubt, but he was by no means such a phenomenon as Poe appeared to imagine. Have you read Gabriel's works? I asked. Does Lecoq come up to your idea of a detective? Sherlock Holmes sniffed sardonically. Lecoq was a miserable bungler, he said, in an angry voice. He had only one thing to recommend him, and that was his energy. That book made me positively ill. The question was how to identify an unknown prisoner. I could have done it in 24 hours. Lecoq took 6 months or so. It might be made a textbook for detectives to teach them what to avoid. I felt rather indignant at having 2 characters whom I had admired treated in this cavalier style. I walked over to the window and stood looking out into the busy street. This fellow may be very clever, I said to myself, but he is certainly very conceited. There are no crimes and no criminals in these days, he said. Querulously, what is the use of having brains in our profession? I know well that I have it in me to make my name famous. No man lives or has ever lived who has brought the same amount of study and of natural talent to the detection of crime, which I have done. And what is the result? There is no crime to detect, or, at most, some bungling villainy with a motive so transparent that even a Scotland Yard official can see through it. I was still annoyed at his bumptious style of conversation. I thought it best to change the topic. I wonder what that fellow is looking for, I asked, pointing to a stalwart, plainly dressed individual who was walking slowly down the other side of the street. Looking anxiously at the numbers, he had a large blue envelope in his hand and was evidently the bearer of a message. "You mean the retired sergeant of Marines," said Sherlock Holmes. "Brack and bounce," thought I to myself. He knows that I cannot verify his guess. The thought had hardly passed through my mind when the man whom we were watching caught sight of the number on our door and ran rapidly across the roadway. We heard a loud knock, a deep voice below, and heavy steps ascending the stair. "For Mr. Sherlock Holmes," he said, stepping into the room and handing my friend a letter. Here was an opportunity of taking the conceit out of him. He little thought of this when he made the random shot. "May I ask, my lad," I said, in the blandest voice, "what your trade may be?" "Commissioner, sir," he said, gruffly. "Uniform away for repairs." "And you are?" I asked, with a slightly malicious glance at my companion. "A sergeant, sir. Royal Marine Light Infantry, sir." "No answer?" "Right, sir." He clicked his heels together, raised his hand in salute, and was gone.稍微休息一下。刚刚念的部分呢，是华生医生，这是第一次和福尔摩斯见面，然后因为福尔摩斯在找一起合租的对象，然后呢，他们交换了一下彼此的讯息，就一起住了在 Baker Street 贝克街221号 B的那间房间。然后华生医生呢发现常常会有非常非常不同的人来拜访福尔摩斯，他们会在那个 sitting room， 就是一个福尔摩斯办案的地方，他们的客厅接待这些每次来都很不一样的人。然后华生医生 很想摸清楚福尔摩斯到底是何方神圣。接着呢，福尔摩斯就带他看，就是展现出他出色的观察力。没错，教他用一个人从头到脚的很多细节的地方去观察出这个人的职业，或是他是做什么的，这样子。我们今天大概就差不多念到这边 ，Chapter 2，第2章结束。下一次就是会从第3章开始念，希望有帮助大家，希望有帮助到大家放松心情。你们喜欢听这个故事吗？我真的很喜欢翻页的声音。我有喝水。喜欢就好。那接下来呢，要感谢 Super Cute。感谢 Super Cute 之前呢，请先容我去个洗手间。晚安，晚安，伴星们。那还醒着的各位，我们来一起感谢 Super Cute 可爱飞的部分。读书上班的大家辛苦了。你们喜欢就好。 首先，伊有卡桑有点累，怕到时候睡着忘记丢，所以先提早丢可爱入场费。默默夜间朗读台加油，也辛苦了。嘿，不辛苦。可爱费ありがとう，伊有卡桑。Nemesis 成为会员2个月，成为 Only 讲2个月。我果然好喜欢默默念英文的声音哦，很标准，很好听。ありがとうね。是不是被黏过的荆棘柠檬嗓今天成了一个狗狗的贴图？ありがとうございます。可爱费ありがとう。小杨果，讲小杨果嗓，默默晚安，晚安。可愛费ありがとう。元気さん，今天也好可爱呀、认真念书的默默，感觉一天的辛苦都被治愈了。明天还要处理事情，就先去睡啦。默默晚安，晚安。可愛费ありがとうね、元気さん。伊有卡さん，话说最近都没有在直播中看到结合嗓诶，是被默默做掉冰进冰箱里了吗？我才没有做掉结合嗓，伊有卡嗓，不要造谣。可愛费ありがとうね。会被我做掉的只有第一，色情机器人；第二，开不好笑的玩笑；第三，随意谩骂别人。OK。可爱夜神好洒，默默我在打深夜日麻，能祝我把把拿好牌吗？祝你把把拿好牌，可爱夜神好洒，可爱费ありがとうね。可爱抹茶冲冲冲冲拉风伞，长了一个爱心的贴图，可爱费ありがとうね。可爱抹茶厂，你的名字好长，越来越长。元気さん。本来睡着了，后来想到一件事情，又起来了。默默，你喝拿铁等等睡得着吗？还有早上的刷牙帮大忙了。可愛费ありがとうね、元気さん。其实我边念也是有点想睡觉的，所以应该没问题。早上的时候呢，其实因为我起床的时候，开机需要很长一段时间，然后我的眼睛也看不太清楚，我就想说他们到底在聊什么，我就跑进去了，笑死。Scott 盖さん，辛苦了，不辛苦不辛苦，可愛费ありがとうございます。高高的夜嗓，好喜欢默默的晚安会，要记得好好休息，不要跟我一样，已累积36小时没睡，晚点还要赶曲子。高高的夜嗓，请去睡觉，曲子没有你的健康重要，请去睡觉。高高的夜嗓，现在马上闭上你的眼睛，你如果不去睡觉，我就把你变掉。修文嗓，好久没有听全英文的故事了，谢谢默默今天的朗读。不客气，谢谢你们来听。修文嗓可愛费ありがとうございます。我哪有很凶？我明明就很温柔。乱说，造谣。默默的风纪委员三桑，从一默都2个月，ありがとうね。默默辛苦了，刚下班回来能听见默默的助眠朗读，真是太好了。想必晚上睡觉时能做个好梦，一定可以的，一定可以的。可怜，不是可爱费啦，讨厌，乱说。 我不要在这边再看到高高的夜嗓了，你不要再做曲子了，睡不好就不好做，请你去睡觉。你不要，我把你的 Super Trap， 我把你的 Super Q 变掉，高高的夜嗓，Super Q ありがとう，可愛いありがとう，但是我把你变掉接下来感谢是什么？接下来感谢绿界的可爱费，没有署名的粉红汤圆嗓。哇，没有署名的粉红汤圆嗓成了6折。等一下，我看一下哦。ありがとうございます。没有署名的粉红汤圆嗓，我知道你就是想要我健健康康、开开心心的嘛。我也希望你们可以健健康康、开开心心。ありがとうございますね。没有署名的粉红汤圆嗓。冲田さん、欢迎成为妹いらっしゃい。千本さん、去睡觉。我把你变掉哦。没有署名的粉红汤圆嗓，我就不念6次了。但是我收到你的讯息了，ありがとうね。Steve さん，寒流要来了，这几天会越来越冷。默默如果没这么早睡，晚上要好好保暖。好的，没问题。ありがとうございます、Steve さん。其实我也没有说一直在熬夜啦，我觉得我反而是我们极深空的作息担当。我只有假日的时候，上周末的时候比较熬夜，因为不小心倒太多酒了，一个手滑不小心倒太多酒了。既然我想过嗓，没有任务，杀请1之1，躺了那么久还是睡不着，所以就一直听着默默的声音啦。怎么会这样子？我的声音不催眠吗？小羊嗓可愛いありがとうね。高高的夜嗓，拜拜。肩本嗓，拜拜。5分钟后还是不要看到你们，请你们用这5分钟好好去反省反省，为什么你们还在这边？为什么还不去睡觉？爱你们哦，不要太难过哦。妹妹晚安，虽然我还在打配，姐姐，不要那么早关，等我。为什么要干 Apex？ 你看又来了。Steve 嗓，我跟你说，姐姐她不会很晚睡，所以只要姐姐说要睡，我也就不会打了，因为我不喜欢一个人打 Apex， 所以不会太晚了，不用担心。而且呢，我其实也不早起，我其实也没有很早起来，所以，睡眠时间还是都有超过6小时吧，我想想，7小时。夜宵嗓会成为内默的妹1个月，伊娜夏列岛。默默的声音真的很让人放松，默默辛苦了，有放松到就好。ありがとうね。 再来是来自绿界的凭什么伞，声音很好听，很棒，辛苦了。不辛苦，ありがとうね。凭什么伞可爱飞ありがとう。吉娃娃想成为欧内讲2个月，为什么要给我等于？欠扁。喝了一大口拿铁。我觉得默默的声音很熟悉，有种似曾相识的感觉。是在说我的声音很大众吗？好像哪里都听得到。Well, thank you。你这是在玩火。只睡了1小时的我要继续赶作品了，加油哦！可爱夜神好嗓，默默辛苦了，虽然听不大懂，但听了很疗愈。有疗愈就好，ありがとうね，可愛飞ありがとう，可爱夜神好嗓。默默的声音让人安心。花子くんさん，你要准备考试的话，就算消失1个月，我也不会把你忘记的，你就放心去读书吧。好好念书。如果你想专心的话，离开没关系，你只要后面一直放着 Nemesis Cycle， 我就不会忘记你。ありがとうね。Steve 想那我要消失1个月。なんで？我没有忘记你们，我很难忘记你们，我记忆力太好了。跟你们说，这边从那个小内テカシさん、吉娃娃、花子くん、Steve、冰淇淋、千树、千本，被我变掉的 Dark Close、Billy Cole、黄世杰、星火星，这边我基本上我都记得，我刚刚念过的全部都记得。哦 ，UW， 它有小几个表情符号。我也记得，小雅我当然记得 ，Milai 我记得 ，Livix 我也记得，秀恩记得，还有那个不会念的蛋蛋，你说很喜欢我的朗读，我也记得，阿明我记得，高乐记得，雅思记得，林老师当然记得，可以记得，我都记得。千本回来了。我今天有睡满8小时，现在在上班。なるほど。千本さん回来了，いらっしゃいね、おかえり。半个老师当然记得，虎猫记得，蝶豆花不是豆花记得，花子爸爸马自达赏记得，花子爸爸马自达赏就是之前在抓滴滴的时候被我抓到的嘛，记得。小杨记得，有跟我一起玩糖豆人。野板当然记得，好好去读书。可比斯记得。克鲁米さん单推默默嘛，记得。小茶心瑶记得，再凯当然记得。我新来的，新来安安没问题。小安迪感觉没有我没关系，我今天记得了。不被记得好像比较安全。迪迪猫当然记得爱撸猫桑嘛，我到底是记得还是记仇呢？Genki さん，虽然今天的英文都听不懂，但很让人放松，很舒服。默默今天朗读辛苦了，今天也超棒的。这次真的要去睡了，晚安。对了，小爱有帮你剪跟细姐姐节拍的诗词哦，有空可以看一下。我有看到哦，谢谢你们。Genki さん可愛ありがとうね。但是就是一次就好了，不要一直去麻烦。席をに OK ありがとうね。감사합니다。 谢谢你们帮我，就是圆了这个小梦。Burpix 上记得吗？ Burpix 上也是被我抓到滴滴的嘛。珊珊当然记得。狗狗的夜，おかえり，怎么还没去睡觉？你们都不听Nemo的话了。凭什么想羡慕被记得？你羡慕什么？你觉得我没有记得你吗？被人记得是很美好的事。Next， 哎呀，你不改名的话，我都会记得啦。晚安，晚安，先去睡觉，晚安。新来的班星，黑风いらっしゃい，ありがとうね，主见安安。试试天嗓你也差不多啦。CNK 也是，我都记得我抓过谁哟。我超级厉害，记仇不是记仇，记得非常的清楚。为什么你们变成36.8度？36.8度是什么？有没有体温吗？晚安，先睡个晚安喽。ありがとうね，谢谢你今天来。不要知道比较好，为什么？你高兴真的吗？你高兴，太好了。好好读书哦。36.8度，要去问姐姐。姐姐今天不是开杂谈吗？橙红柚伞，欢迎初音もといらっしゃい。ありがとうね，姐姐哦。姐姐36.8度是什么？蛋都弄不熟。我知道姐姐她是恶魔之手，太好笑了。对，我想起来了。中田嗓虽然看了不少剪辑，但今天是初见。默默的英文真棒，配合温柔的嗓音，柔和的音乐很疗愈。谢谢你让我稍微放松了一下。ありがとうございますね，可愛非ありがとう。很开心可以用今天这短暂的时间让你们感到放松或是疗愈。我真的很喜欢做这件事情，我感觉很幸福。ありがとうね。我一直都很喜欢念故事给你们听，那在一次一次的朗读中抓到自己想念的内容是什么，还有你们喜欢的内容是什么。对我来说，整个过程那件事都是很开心的，很幸福的，因为我很喜欢带给别人一种疗愈和放松的氛围，所以听到你们这样说，我真的很开心。ありがとう。Zivix 原来我的 ID 还不够明显吗？那我试试天后再来改一下。 我要去每个认识的 V 那边丢 SC， 嘿嘿，可爱菲利亚多内 ZVX 上。可是什么东西很明显？我知道你很爱姐姐啊。可爱菲利亚多。跟默默待在一起，我们也很幸福，太好了。可爱夜深好闪，我开心，我也开心。ありがとう，可愛菲利亚多呢。早八先睡，晚安呢。早八加油，天气很冷，早起很痛苦，頑張って。今天好温柔哦，只有今天温柔，我只有朗读台的时候会温柔，且看且珍惜呀。立空立个さん升级为お姉ちゃんあらっしゃい是什么？いらっしゃいありがとう。前本为什么一直摸我的头？你摸了几次了？希望念梦能一直温柔。我可以一直温柔啊。你们不想看到不同面向的我吗？你们只想看到温柔的内蒙吗？晚安呢，伊古尼桑，茉莉考加油！激动的默默我也很喜欢，ありがとうね，ありがとう。基本上之后朗读台都会成为一个我的固定的节目。那不是希望啦，就是很感谢很多人喜欢那么的朗读台。板板也有板板也有发现到这件事情，然后说我可以固定的来开朗读台。对我来说真的是，我快哭了。对我来说真的是一件美梦成真的事情，真的很感谢你们对我的喜爱。江香锅伞，以后用不同的名字是不是就可以不被记住了？我不知道你要改成什么，可爱菲利亚多呢？在抹茶冲拉风伞，谢谢默默，今晚终于能安稳入睡。可爱菲利亚多ございます，可以安稳入睡，太好了。因为我每次看到你们，就是说，听完朗读台可以很放松，或是可以很好睡，或是你们听到一半就会睡着了，我就会觉得很开心，就是真的有帮助到你们。然后就算没有睡着，你们的心情也可以放松，我就觉得很开心。然后我一直都是希望可以用声音去帮助到别人，去带给别人一点什么东西，所以 I'm so happy， 我真的很开心。半颗花生飞吐司伞，我辛苦了，要去睡了，晚安。晚安呢，我辛苦。可愛ありがとうございます。OK， 那今天就是一样，希望大家都有度过一个很放松的夜晚。那差不多要跟大家说晚安了。那希望 整天的各种不开心都被扣掉了，ありがとうね，太好了。皆さん本日もっといらっしゃい，ありがとうね。那希望不管你们白天经历了什么我不知道的事情，我大部分都不知道。不管是什么难过的、生气的，或是不舒服的事情，我都希望你们可以就是 let it go。因为在我这边，我只希望大家都可以开开心心的，然后我们一起相处的时间都是愉快的、放松的、很嗨的、很快乐的、很有趣的、很好笑。所以我会好好照顾自己，你们也要好好照顾自己，不要太在乎一些事情，就 let it go 就没事了，也不是很重要，开开心心的就好。ありがとうね。Phoenix さん，不知道默默下次开歌会是什么时候？礼拜四哦。上次都是日文歌，可以的话，可不可以听到默默唱陈绮月的《烟幕》啊？好，我会去听听看，但是什么时候练好不一定，会不会唱不一定。但是感谢你的推荐。ありがとうね、Phoenix さん。你们如果有想推荐我的歌的话，可以写在棉花糖，我比较不会忘记。写在棉花糖 ，SC 会被洗掉嘛？写在棉花糖里面的话，我比较会看到，会记得。Steve さん，默默是那种能容易忘掉不愉快事情的类型吗？应该是这样子，因为我记忆力真的很好，我不会忘记事情，但是我不会不愉快，因为我觉得我不是想讲大道理或是什么，但是因为我一直都很喜欢宇宙的事情嘛，你们也知道，我一直都觉得我们是宇宙里的一个超级渺小的尘埃，很中二的感觉，但是我真的是这么想的。我觉得天大的事情都没有快快乐乐的生活来的重要，然后就是我们都是用心生活，努力生活，努力想要达成一个目标，或是只是想要开开心心的过日子，所以有些事情你如不去在意它，你会发现其实它根本不重要。然后我可能当下会觉得说有些事情会让我不开心，可是不开心过了之后，你再回头看会发现，就是我当初为什么要为了这个不开心，或是我是很容易说就是不去在乎，然后放下，就是不喜欢的事情我就 let it go。 我可以跟你们分享一个以前的一个事情，就是晚安，要睡觉的晚安。我可以跟你们我先感谢 Steve さん可愛飞ありがとうね Steve さん。以前 Nemo 有一个地球人朋友，我以为我们很要好，然后呢直到有一段时间，有一些其他朋友来跟我说，这个朋友到处在讲我的坏话，而且讲的都是造谣的话。然后他不只讲了我的，他讲了我们身边所有人的，他去跟不同的团体、不同的人讲不同的人的坏话。当时被我发现的时候，那个朋友呢写了一封道歉信给我。我没有跟他说话，我没有原谅他，我也没有不原谅他，我只是让他就是淡出我的生命。 就这样子，缓缓、不知不觉，它就消失在我的生命里了。所以，我不会去说要去报复它，或是一直记着这个不开心，就让它单掉。我那时候，我还是开开心心的生活，抱抱美式的妹妹，还有我在。好的，也等那姐姐，所以36.8度是什么？既然人生那么短，为什么要花珍贵的时间去记不好的事情？记忆真的好。没错，例如看默默还比较值得。没错，娟姐，这个我不知道。Steve 我想消失一阵子，专心工作，静静看着默默就好。默默可以不要介意吗？当然啦，我怎么会介意呢？你们有来看我都很开心。你们如果有事要忙，没有办法看也没关系。你们只要一直喜欢着 Nemo 就好了，这样就够了。本当にありがとうね、可愛いありがとう、スティーブさん。然后我的明天开始那个同阶掉到10个人，大家都去忙自己的事情啊，笑死！喜欢就够了嘛，不用看。同阶10人 ，nice。对，过了就好，真的没什么，没那么重要的事情，没那么天大的事情，没什么天大的事情是可以太影响到我们的生活的。啊，胸口的体温。姐姐，你该不会拿温度计去量你胸口的体温吧 ？What？ 你们时不时很忙也是可以投棉花糖给我啊，我会看。不在我也会想念你们呢。你们知道我记忆力很好。那今天差不多要跟大家说晚安了。要去读书的，要去工作的，你们消失一阵子，我也不会忘记你们。你们想我的时候，我也会想你们。本当に真的，我是一个很重感情的星星。笑死，真的啦，我没有在胡乱。那今天要跟大家说晚安喽，希望你们都会有个好梦。那我们就今天礼拜几？今天礼拜1。那我们明天见喽！明天我们是要决定扮新的形象，OK。晚安，天气很冷，要好好的保暖哦。我真的不会忘记你们啦，讨厌，为什么不相信我？乖乖，拜拜，みなさい，拜拜。那大家晚安，祝你们有个好梦。棉花糖不用钱，棉花糖是免费的。谢谢今天来听我朗读的各位伴星，晚安了。おやすみなさい。